First of all, let's understand what is the feeling of not being good enough. At its core, the feeling of not being good enough is basically a feeling of inadequacy, worthlessness, and even inferiority. This feeling of inadequacy is often rooted in childhood experiences, like having overly critical parents, cruel peers, shaming authority figures, or perhaps having not had the opportunity to engage in positive, challenging experiences that helped you as a kid to gain the feeling of competence and adequacy. It can also be increased by the bad habit of being compared to other people without taking into consideration the differences of circumstances. One of the biggest mistakes that people make about the feeling of not being good enough is that they assume that it has something to do with how successful you are in life. Truth to be told, there are lots of people who are extremely successful but still feel not good enough. In fact, we could even say that in their case, being successful is more like a defense mechanism, or cover-up if you prefer, that they are using to bandage this painful feeling. The long-term effect of not feeling good enough can be far greater than what you can imagine. Here are a couple of examples. Low self-esteem, isolation, depression, anxiety, addiction, difficulty to solve basic problems in life, difficulty to form healthy relationships in life, and even to try new things and get out of your comfort zone. In today's video, I'm going to show you how you can deal with this feeling of not feeling good enough using the Osfour self-coaching model, aka the Swiss knife model.
Hello everyone, this is Sophia Osfour and welcome on my masterclass on healing wounds with the Osfour self-coaching model. Before we start, let's first understand what is a model. In psychology, a model is referred as a theory or process that is either created to understand a mechanism or to solve a precise problem, such as the work of Byron Katie, which is made out of 4 powerful questions that helps you change your belief system. The next question you're probably wondering about is what is the Osfour self-coaching model then? The Osfour self-coaching model is a process, a set of habits and principles, and a tool. But the best way to describe it would be to simply say that it is a daily practice. As a process, it is designed to transform negative experiences into powerful life lessons and help you heal them. As a set of habits and principles, it teaches you how you can recycle your negative experiences to drastically increase your self-awareness and enhance the quality of your communication, as well as using those experiences as a springboard for you to learn, grow, and evolve. As a tool, it provides you with a powerful set of principles that, and when combined with the sets of habits and the process itself, becomes a very sophisticated tool that ultimately allows you to self-coach yourself on the spot in order to manage and face the daily challenges of your life in a more efficient, powerful, and peaceful way. Now, I know what you're going to say to me. Sophia, that all sounds very important and interesting, but what do you mean exactly? Let me break it down to you. You know how sometimes you're going through a very difficult situation and the only question you have in your head over and over is, why me? And don't you agree that negative experiences can be sometimes so challenging that it feels as though you're dragging them years and years after you've experienced them? Well, what you probably don't know is that the reason you drag them is because you have not been able to process them properly, digest them, forgive them, and ultimately learn the lesson they had to teach you. Oh yes, because I forgot to tell you, but all the bad experiences that you're going through in your life, well, they're not just there to hurt you, but in fact to teach you a very important lesson you need to learn in order to grow. And spoiler alert, guys, but that is one of the purpose of life. I'm just saying. So, in other words, the better you get at digesting those experiences and of course learning from them, the easier your life is going to be. So I'm guessing that at this point, your next question is, what would I really benefit from learning the Osfour self-coaching model? Okay, that is a fair question. But before I tell you that, let me first say this. One of the most disturbing assumptions that is made in our society, and that I personally always thought to be not only strange, but also seriously disempowering, is the fact that people take for granted that because you are a human being from day one, that obviously mean that you know and understand everything that is happening inside your inner world, which is simply not true. The reality is that most of us operate at a basic and reactive level because we are on autopilot mode, unconscious of what is really happening into our inner world. We react and respond to outside stimuli without having a clear understanding of why we feel or act the way we do, simply because we have never been taught how to inquire about it. But moreover, because even if we knew about it, what are we supposed to do with it? So the benefit of learning the Osfour self-coaching model is that it gives you the knowledge, tools, and skills you need to be mindful of yourself, where you can anticipate, understand, and control what is happening into your inner world. But more importantly, deal with it. The model is designed to provide you with a clear and simple process and give you the tools to self-coach yourself in order to operate in a more efficient way at 3 constant levels that most people struggle with in their daily life, which is what you experience, how you experienced it, and how you respond to it. In this masterclass, I'm teaching you the basic of the Osfour self-coaching model through study cases of famous people. Together, we are going to analyze what are the negative experiences they faced and how they could digest, learn, and heal them if they had the Osfour self-coaching model. The model is made out of 3 layers. The process, which is the 4 different steps that the model is made of. The postures, which is the attitude that you will need to develop to go through the process. And finally, the postulas, which are, if you will, the rules that structure the model. Here in this masterclass, you will be taught the process and the postures. And if you're interested to work with me on one-to-one and learn the whole Osfour self-coaching model, go on my website to see my coaching package, or contact me directly via my email address to book your 30 minutes free discovery session. You'll find both the link below this video. Finally, keep in mind that although the Osfour self-coaching model is a very powerful tool, it is not designed to work on traumatic experiences or for people with mental issues. For those things, we advise you to seek other type of support.
Hello everyone, this is Osfour and welcome on this new episode of our masterclass on healing wounds with the Osfour self-coaching model. Imagine the scene. You're sitting by your desk and suddenly one of your colleagues comes along and she's basically explaining to you that the work that you have done a couple of days ago, well, basically was not exactly what was expected of you. And basically you have to redo it. In the moment, obviously you don't say nothing, you take all the feedback and, you pretend everything is fine, obviously. Right? But as soon as she left, you go run in the toilet and you start crying. You can't help it because in that moment what you really feel is not good enough. This is a moment of crisis. But often those moments of crisis are so normalized that we don't really consider them as a moment of crisis. In my opinion, those moments are moments where you should be able to answer 4 questions and develop 4 skills in order to answer those 4 questions. The Osfour self-coaching model is really a model that you can use that way in those specific moments. You can use it as a process, and this is something you have seen, in the previous video that you have that I've already posted. But in today's video, I wanted to do something very different and slightly shorter also. So I want to show you how you can use the model to understand what is going on in those moments. Because here's the thing, if you don't know what's going on inside of you, then who's supposed to know? Not only that, but if you don't know what's going on also inside of you, you run into the risk of blaming other people or the world for things that are happening inside of you, or even worse, to make assumptions about you that are not even true, right? So, you ready? Let's do this. But before we start, I just want to remind you, by the way, that you do have a worksheet, a free worksheet that you can download, that is part of this masterclass. So you just download it. So you have something to follow and you can practice and apply this model into your life. You ready? This time is the right one. Let's do this! I'm going to show you today how you can self-coach yourself on the spot. Because self-coaching yourself is basically learning how to move from an autopilot mode to self-awareness. And that, my friend, demands skills. So the Osfour self-coaching model can be used as a process, but it also can be used as a tool, and that's exactly what I'm going to show you today. So the first question that you should be, in my opinion, able to answer, and in fact everybody should be able to answer in those moments of crisis, is what is going on? What's going on? So how are you going to find out? Well, it's very simple. First of all, you're going to see here a picture of the first part of the model. Normally, when you use the model as a process, we're talking about perception, thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and your behaviors. This is the normal structure. But when you want to answer the question, what's going on, which is now you're using the model as a self-coaching model, as a self-coaching tool, and this is a skill that you're developing, which I call cutting down. It is basically a skill that has been developed by NLP. Cutting down, answer the question, what's going on? Okay? So first of all, the first place you're going to start, unlike the process, instead of looking for your perception, what you're going to start is with your emotions. So take a place where you're calm, quiet, and connect your breathing with your heartbeat. Obviously, I'm not going to do it, because it's going to take a while. So I'm just going to explain to you. And I'm going to try to find out, everybody should be able to relate to, I'm not feeling good enough. Okay, so I'm not feeling good enough. What am I feeling? What am I feeling in this moment of crisis? And when you are in the moment of crisis, it's amazing because you have all the information at hand, right? So that's what's so cool for you to be able to coach yourself in that moment. So I'm feeling sad, upset, angry, shame. Okay, so I take a mental note of all those feelings. Maybe there's more to you, but for the sake of this exercise, I'm not going to stay here 4 hours. Now, once I know what are the emotions that I'm feeling, I can go one step further, and I want to find out, okay, so before I started to feel all of this emotion, what was I thinking about? So before I started to feel all of those feelings, most likely, if you don't feel good enough, there was a lot of judgment that would come out. Yeah, it's always the same with you. Can't you tell? For sure the whole office is going to know about your work. It's always the same. For sure you're even going to be fired. I'm certain of it. Don't you remember that 4 years ago you failed, at this paper or something, Your brain is going to go on a whole series of sort of judgment and attacks, and you want to know about those things because they're probably running into your head all year long, but you don't realize it. And so once again, this model is about increasing the level of your self-awareness. Self-awareness means you're moving from an autopilot mode to a pilot mode, like I'm on charge, right? And that's why it's so important. So once again, you take a mental note of all of those, sentence, judgment, criticize that came along, because what you want to be able to do when this will be finished, this exercise will finish, is write it down, all of those things into your diary. Now that I have found out, what was the thought structure, what I want to understand is, okay, what is it exactly that trigger this set of thoughts? Now, obviously in this situation, we know already what was the trigger. The trigger was the fact that this colleague came along and she told me that I've made a mistake in this, and maybe, how can I say, in another situation, maybe if you're not aware of what's going on and you just have a state of emotions where you're just feeling panicking or overwhelmed or something, maybe you don't have the trigger. In this specific exercise, we do have the trigger. So you're going to search for it. Okay, so what was the trigger? Okay, so the fact that my colleague came and told me that I had to correct my work, blah, blah, blah. This has triggered these thoughts, which triggered this emotion. Perfect. Now I'm aware. Obviously, what's important here to understand is that my perception of my colleague coming into my office and telling me that I need to correct this is that I'm not good enough. That is my perception. Now, what it tells me is that this means that I have a wound of not feeling good enough, right? Because someone could have come, but if I don't have this wound, say to me, listen, Sophia, this is completely wrong, but if I don't have anything, I'll be, oh, sorry, yeah, oh my God, I realize I'm going to correct it, and that will be the end of it. But because I carry this wound, then it touches something really deep inside of me. And it's not what's happening. I always say that to you. It's my perception of what's happening. And my perception is that I made a mistake, and this means that I'm not good enough. Okay, so now I have the basic structure. I have the perception, I have the thought, I have the emotions. Obviously, in terms of belief, I don't need to search because the belief is already there. I don't feel good enough. I'm not good enough. That is the belief. So now what's interesting to search for is, okay, when I don't feel good enough, how do I behave? See, here's the trick. When I have a belief, right, it acts as a self-fulfilling prophecy. So most likely what it means is that because I don't feel good enough, unconsciously, maybe instead of doing my research 100%, I've done only 50%. And that's why when I did my paper, it was not as accurate as I was asked, because I was just fulfilling that belief that I have to not being good enough. So when my colleague is coming back, in a way, it's reinforcing the belief that I have. It's kind of a vicious circle, because when you have a belief, that is, positive and empowering, it's okay. But when you have a belief system like this, I'm not good enough, it's kind of a nasty circle, because basically you don't behave at your full potential, which means that you're bringing exactly what you fear to bring. It's a nasty thing. But the number one key to that to change that is to be aware of what's happening. Once I have, understood the entire structure, what am I feeling? What were my thoughts? What was the trigger? What was the perception? What was, obviously the belief is there, and what is the behavior? Then I have a clear view of what's going on, and no one can change anything unless they understand what they're trying to change, okay? All of this I'm going to report on my diary. And why I'm going to do that? Because if you're facing something, a crisis about like this moment, I don't feel good enough, don't think you're going to do this just once. Do it maybe for an entire month and try to figure it out. Okay, what were all the triggers? When would it happen? Put the date, put the time. And every time, try to find out, how did I felt? What was I thinking? What was the trigger? How did I behave? Try to find out. What you're gonna find out is that this whole package is running probably more than you could even imagine. See, what it means is that this is a habit now, and if you want to be able to change that habit of not feeling good enough and all that is connected to it, you're going to have to understand when it's happening, how it's happening, why it's happening, so that you can, on the next part of this, on the next part that I'm going to show you, explain to you how you can manage this situation. Okay? So this is for the first part. Okay guys, so on the second part of self-coaching yourself, there's two things that you want to do. You want to answer the question, what is it exactly that is hurting me about not being good enough? And second is skills that I call zoom in, okay? So this is a moment where you're going to see the picture here once again of this part of the model where you have to find out your shadow, distinguishment, quality of answer, positive attention, and pattern. So once again, we're going to use this a bit differently than we use the model as a process. And obviously the shadow here, I don't need to look for it very very far. It's just there. I'm not good enough. This is the shadow. This is the one thing that is hurtful about this crisis that you're facing. But what you found out, when you want to clarify really, is what is it exactly that is so hurtful about not being good enough, right? Well, you might say, well, it's because if I'm not good enough, then people are not going to want to connect with me. If I'm not good enough, I'm not going to be able to, meet the right person for me. If I'm not good enough, nobody wants to hire me if I'm not good enough. People are going to talk bad about me if I'm not good enough. Whatever is your reason, what is it exactly? But you got to clarify, what is it so hurtful about not being good enough, okay? Once you've done that, what you want to find out is the part which is called distinguishment. And this is a part where, first of all, you want to ask your question. Okay, so I don't feel good enough, but is this something that belongs to me? Or is this something that I have been told? Right? Because it could be very much that, I don't know, someone when you were, 5 years old, or, usually this stuff comes from childhood, I'm afraid, told you, well, it's because you're not good enough, right? And in that moment, you're just a kid, so you absorbed it, you put it in your head, But truthfully, if you really go and ask yourself, hold on a minute, let me just think a moment. And this, once again, you close your eyes, connect with yourself, connect your breathing with your heartbeat, and you ask yourself, okay, so where is this whole thing about not being good enough comes? Does it come from me or comes from someone else? I tell you what, once I've done an exercise very similar to that, and I found out that, 99% of all the stuff that I thought about me, it didn't even come from me, but I believed it. This is the part that's crazy. I believed it like my life was counting on it. And I realized that when I actually ask myself, okay, so yeah, what do you personally think about this thing? I realized that my opinion was the opposite, absolute opposite of everything I've been told, but also what I was saying about me, which was crazy. So that's why it's important to distinguish. Is this belongs to me or does it belong to someone else? If it belongs to someone else, then I'm gonna have to somehow find a way to give it back. And one of the best way to give it back is simply, if you can have access to the person who's given you this thing, so simply, go back to them and remind them, you remember when you said that to me, Well, you know what, I think it's not true, and I just wanted to give it back to you because it doesn't belong to me. It seems to be a simple gesture, but it's very empowering. Because basically what I do in that moment is I'm like, listen, this is, you've given me this thing, but I'll give it back to you. If you can't do that, you can always do it, closing your eyes and do it in a spiritual way where you imagine the person and you just give it back to them. That is if you find out that this didn't belong to you. However, if you found out that, actually, this belongs to me because when I was a kid, I was struggling at this and, I kept on struggling, and over time I just felt like I was not good enough. Okay, so perfecto. Now, understanding where it comes from doesn't mean you're going to solve the problem, but at least, it allows you to clarify where it comes from, and clarity is self-awareness. And self-awareness means that you move from autopilot to pilot. And pilot is the place where changes appear. Okay, so now the quality of my answer. So obviously in that moment, the quality of my answer was that, I just took the feedback of my colleague and I listened very carefully to what she said. And as soon as she, left the office, I ran into the toilet and I started crying. Now, it could have been worse than that, and a place where you could have, for instance, wanna, have a, how could I say, a deeper view of your quality of answers. Imagine if someone is starting to, shout at your colleague, no, I've done exactly what I was asked, and started to, get so angry and defensive, then this would have been definitely an answer, quality of answer to re-question. Okay. In this case, of course, she just ran to the toilet. It lacked authenticity, for sure, but at least if you are capable to self-coach yourself, it could be very empowering. But of course, if you don't have the skills to self-coach yourself, what it basically means is that you just hurt. That's it. And I'm certain that lots of people can relate to that. So that's why, in my opinion, being able to self-coach yourself in the moment of crisis is very important. It's a skill that everybody should be able to have. So both of those quality of answer are not very good if that's all you have. If you rely on only that, then yeah, they both, are not going to take you, they're not going to be very efficient, because in one hand you're just busting out of, anger, and on the other you just basically swallow your pain and your hurt until the next time. So none of those are good. They're only good if you have the skills to self-coach yourself and learn from it. That's the only thing. Okay, so now the next step would be your positive attention, right? But in this space, this is not really useful. So this is a part of the model that in that specific moment when you're self-coaching yourself, it's not really needed. It would have been something else, then yes, but it's not the case. So we're just gonna pass into that. And we're gonna jump into the pattern. So the pattern that I'm interested here is, okay, and I've already spoken this in the previous step that we've seen, which is, okay, how many times a week, a month, a year am I having, moment where I don't feel good enough? How many times a week I have those feelings? How many times a week I have these thoughts? And what is it that trigger? You want to find out how many times this feeling of not being good enough is affecting me, and in what kind of what area of my life it affects me. Because someone can feel, for instance, not good enough in their workplace, but for instance they could feel good enough in their private life as a mother, or in a certain role of their life. So you want to find out what kind of area of my life I touch with this feeling of not being good enough, what kind of roles are affected by it. The more clarity, the more self-awareness, the better it is. Now we're moving to the next step. Okay guys, so now we are on the third part of the model, and there's a picture that's going to come out. In this third part, there's two different sets. The first part is realization, lesson, change, and on the second part of the same step, you have goal setting, which answer the question what, why, how, inconvenience, and engagement, right? So in this part of the model, it answers two basic questions that are connected to two skills that you need to self-coach yourself. The number one skills is what I call slow down. And this answer this basic question, which everybody should be able to answer, is what is it exactly that needs to be changed about this whole thing? See, if I don't feel good enough, what is it exactly that needs to be changed about that, right? So this is called slow down. Okay, so here's a tough one. When you feel as though you're not good enough, this comes from a posture of and a worldwide need as a human being to be needed, or to be useful. Not needed, but to be useful, And behind it comes from this posture that somehow you have to be useful, and somehow you have to justify your existence, right? Justify and negotiate your existence or your value, okay? So the problem is that our value as a human being is non-negotiable, and you can't justify it, right? So someone may say, well, hold on a minute, I'm very useful because I'm very wealthy, I make lots of money, or because I'm rich, or because I'm beautiful, or because I'm smart, or because I'm this amazing, all of those people, and we have this idea in our society where, this person is valuable because of what they're doing, and people throughout whole history have done things, have been things, have, acted, changed, whatever, which makes them in some kind of ways from that posture more valuable, more useful. But here's the trick. Our value as a human being is non-negotiable, and you can't justify it. Your value is 100%. And you heard me saying this already, but I will keep on saying it, because once again, I personally believe that one of the most oldest destructive wound that you can find in this whole wide world when it comes down to human being is the fact of not being good enough or not being valuable, which is connected. So what needs to be changed is the fact that you accepting the idea that somehow you have to justify and negotiate your value, which you don't. So when you go into slow down mode, what you're really trying to say here is my value is 100%. So you can't not be good enough when you are already 100%. That's it. And so the practice here is to learn to be self-aware of those thoughts, to be self-aware of what triggered this kind of set of thought, emotions, and perception and behaviors, so that when they're coming, you can welcome them, but in a way not accepting them, okay? I get that in that specific moment, you don't feel valuable. I get that part. And this is when self-coaching is very powerful. But I don't agree with you. I actually feel valuable. How do you know that you're valuable? Here's a big question. How do you know that you're valuable? You're valuable because you're born. As simple as that. You could be sitting on a chair for the rest of your life doing nothing than throwing stones and you still be 100% valuable. And this is the case for every single human being on this planet. You can be sitting, I'm going to repeat that, you can be sitting on a chair doing absolutely nothing than throwing stones and your value will still be 100%. That's it. If you can move from that and welcome all of those, thoughts, because that's all they are, thoughts. That's all they are, right? Thoughts of not feeling good enough. And everything that comes with it, the thoughts, the emotions, the behavior, all of this is nothing else than an opinion, right? And so if every time you welcome that, okay, I get that in this specific moment you don't feel good enough, but I don't agree with you because I believe that I'm 100%. How do I know I'm 100%? Well, because Mother Nature thought that was important enough to create me. That's it. You can't beat that. I mean, we're talking about Mother Nature, the one who's created the stars and everything. This is for the first part, right? This was the third skill, okay, and the third question. Now we go on the fourth and last question and skill. And it answers this simple question. How am I going to make that change? Or what do I need to make that change? And I call this focus. Okay? So I already started, to be honest, to sell out on what you're going to do. But it's very simple. When a thought such as I'm not feeling good enough is coming, it's rising, being self-aware allows you, after you monitorize everything, now you know what's coming. So that's why you write down everything on your diary. Now you know what's going on. Okay. So when this is rising, you welcome it and you are, how can I say, replace it. That was the word I was searching. You welcome it. Okay. I hear this is what you're saying. You're saying that I'm not good enough because of this and this and that. I hear that, but I don't agree. This is where I think I'm good enough. Right? And of course your brain is up. What do you mean you're good enough? Are you crazy? Yeah, I think I'm good enough. Why? I just already said it, but I'm going to repeat it. I'm good enough because I believe that Mother Nature created me. And if Mother Nature created me, it must be because I'm valuable, 100%. So in this exercise, what you do is really, okay, what you're going to do to make that change, right? And this is this part of the model, that shows you. What you're going to do is basically a goal setting. Why are you going to do it? Why do you need to change that? Why? Because it's very important that you know why. Because most likely, if you don't feel good enough and you start to oppose to your brain a new thought, it's gonna how can I say, it's gonna disagree with you, and it's gonna come with even more strength, saying, are you crazy? I'm telling you, you're not good enough, da, 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 da. It's like a battle, so you have, in those moments, you really know why you want to make that change. And the reason you want to make that change is because no human being can function well thinking they're not good enough. That's it, right? And not only that, but if it was at least true, then well, but it's not true. You're 100%, so hello. Then you want to understand how you're going to do it. And the how is very important because there will always be a moment where obviously you're going to be weaker than other moment, where it's going to be more, if you're tired or if you've been working a lot, it's going to be more difficult. So you have to have a very clear view or clear plan on how you're going to make that change, right? Every time this thought is coming, rising, I'm welcoming it, and I put this new belief. Now, I understand what you're saying, but I don't agree with what you're saying. So this is what's happening. And this is a battle. So you really have to have a clear plan about what's happening. Then, of course, you have to understand what might be the inconvenience of you creating this new belief, because basically that's what you're doing. There's a belief and you're creating a new one, and you're imposing a new belief. The inconvenience, for instance, is that, when before you used to only give 50% of yourself because you had to, fulfill the prophecy of you not being good enough. Now you're going to have to work 100%. That's kind of annoying, Before I could just get away with working 50%. Now I'm going to have to give 100%. So that could be an inconvenience. That's it. And it's important for you to rise this fact because it's going to affect it's going to affect your will, or it's going to affect potentially your discipline. So that's why you need to be aware of it. Okay. And finally, you just decide, okay, I'm going to engage myself. This is the last part. I'm going to engage myself and I'm going to make that change, right? And I'm going to work on being self-aware, welcoming this belief, and imposing something else. You guys, now this is the last thing I want to say to you. At first, when you are facing a moment of crisis like this, and you're starting to self-coach yourself, it's not going to happen like overnight, right? At first, maybe you're going to be okay for a couple of days. Then, I don't know, there's something that's going to happen and it's going to take you down, and you're going to go back your old habits. You got to be very generous with yourself. And once again, let's go back to the 5 postures of the model, okay? Benevolence, empathy, compassion, active listening, and the coach posture. So in those moments, be welcome to yourself, be kind to yourself, be gentle to yourself. Changing, it's a beautiful journey, but it's not an easy journey. Otherwise, everybody would be doing it, right? And learning how to self-coach yourself, I've been doing it for 5 years. I wish everybody has those skills. Telling you, that's why I've created this model. But it's not easy. It's not easy. And so be gentle also. Be kind to yourself. Be generous to yourself, okay? Maybe today you're not doing so well, but tomorrow you might do so well. So I want to just summarize the 4 skills that you have learned today in the 4 questions that are connected to those skills. The number 1 question at any given time that you should be able to answer is, what is happening? And I call this cut down. The second skills is, what is it exactly that is hurting about what's happening? Or what is the problem about what's happening? And I call this zoom in. The third skills that you need to develop, and is the question that is connected to, is, what is it exactly that needs to be changed about this thing? And I call this slow down. Okay? This is very important because this is really the moment. It's like a video that is going on where you're slowing down until you really see the step that you want to see that changes everything. Okay? And this is very important because this is the moment where you move from autopilot to self-awareness. Okay? Now you're the one on the wheel, not just some 5 years old, child that you used to be many years ago. Finally, the last skill and the last question that is connected to is, how am I going to do that change? And I call that skill focus. Okay. So you guys, I hope that you like this new type of videos because they're much shorter than the previous video that I have done. I'm going to keep on doing this, but if you like this video, give me the thumbs up. Don't forget to download your worksheet and give me the thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel, and I see you next time for another self-coaching session. Until then, all I'm gonna say to you guys is peace, love, and light. Bye-bye!